Today we're going to be making a beginner tutorial for Super Mario 64. Be sure to watch my previous video if you have no experience and want to get started with coding. We got a new mod here. We'll get to the other stuff in the functions later, but we got some letters and numbers here around our title in our name and description, and this is how we're able to change our color. So basically we're using a hex value for the color, and this is I recommend using something like paint.net or something, so you can just pick your color out, or you can search it up on Google, or you can use this to kind of make your own here. So counting from 0 to F, these are 16 digits, and the first two values are for red, second two values for green, and the last two are for blue, and that is how we change our color. In our last video I covered how we can make a button trigger something. So in this case we're triggering play sound, the gunshot sound. Down here we have onHUD render function triggered by our onHUD render hook. So we're going to go ahead and pick out a color for what we want our texts to look like, because we have a couple lines in here that are responsible for text that'll display on screen, and this line here is for the color. So 255 is white. We want it to match our hex value from earlier, so it looks like our title. So that's again why I recommend using that program. Paint.net is a good one to pick out your color easily. So this will make our text show orange on screen as well as our title. The next line in our function shows what text shows up. So it's going to print the text, your text here, string value of a text right here. We need to make sure that's in quotations. We got an X position next to it, Y position, and 2 is our scale. See our text, get ready for it. So we got our gunshot sound playing every single time that we press that Y button. I got a couple other mods in here. We can spawn in some models, and we can cycle through here models and cycle a different action. So let's make it so that way our mod can cycle through different sounds, all of the sounds that we want to play in the game at least. So we're going to make a new table here, local sounds equal to curly brackets. The first value in our table will be a name, and the second value is going to be a constant. So a constant is similar to a variable, except variables we can change. We can make it equal to something else. We can add, subtract. Constants are things that we cannot change, such as sounds from the game. They're already in the game. We can't really change them unless we change the actual sound file itself. But this is still going to be always going to be the sound that it is in the game. So these are our constants here. We got a bunch of sounds. I'm going to eventually add all of them, but we got models that we can look at. We've got behavior IDs. A lot of the game's information is going to be here that you're going to want to look at, such as if you want to spawn enemies, and I'll get to that a little bit later as well. For now I'm scrolling down to sounds, and I'm going to go ahead and just start copying some sounds here. I'm a crazy person, so I'm going to go ahead and add however many hundred of sounds there are, but you would not normally want to do that. If you want to pick out maybe a handful of sounds you'd want to play, then that would be a good idea. But I'm making this for the purpose of tutorial and for others to have a big list right in front of them that'll be easily accessible. So we're going to make another set of brackets for each item in our table. So another little curly bracket, space, we're going to write the name. The name is going to be exactly the same. This is just what we want for our text to show up on screen. That's the only reason we need to do this part. Name equals, this will be a string value, so we need to add some quotations, and we could write whatever we want in here that we want to display on screen, but I'm going to make it the exact same as the next thing, which is our value. So we made some quotations, no sound for our first sound, value equal to no sound. This is our constant. This is a sound that exists within the game, or in this case it's not a sound at all. So I'm going ahead here and add 4 sounds total. We got our gunshot sound, and we got a couple other ones as well. Now we need to make a sound that's going to actually play. We can't play the entire table, so we're going to make a new local variable called selected sound, and that's going to be equal to our first sound in our table. So for now it's going to be equal to 1 sounds 1, and we'll go ahead and be able to change that later in our Mario update function, but for now we need to define it as a variable at the top so we can actually use it in our functions. So next we're going to make a local text variable, and the first part of it is going to be a string. This part's going to stay the same and won't change. And we also want it to display whatever our current selected sounds table item, whatever the name is, we want that to show up on screen. So we're going to do base 2 dots space, and then there's going to be the selected sounds name. So the first thing in our table. To make it actually play our sound, we need to replace the gunshot sound that we just put in here with our new variable instead, which is going to play if we do selected sound dot value, which is the second thing in our table here, and this is going to go ahead and play the constant, which is our sound. And let's also make sure that we change the print text value to be our text, our new variable that we just defined right here. So we're going to get rid of this your text here with the quotations, and we're just going to write text, which is our variable. So that's going to show up on screen. Let's make a new variable here, and notice I'll leave it a global variable, and we'll call it current selected item, and we'll just leave it as 1 for right now, and we can change that up later. So let's go into our Mario update function. Let's make it so that selected sounds will change here. So instead of making it equal to the first sound in our table, which is what it already currently is set to, let's make it set to current selected item, and then we'll be able to change the value of current selected item, which will then change whatever sound is currently selected. Let's add 2 new statements. So if we're pressing left or right on the D-pad, we'll change the value of current selected item. So the bottom is going to look a little complicated, but this basically says that our current selected item, as long as it's not more than the number of sounds, it is going to increase by 1. You could just do that in a more simple way, but don't worry about that. This will make a little more sense. Current selected item, we'll add a condition here. Again, we could simplify it like the bottom one, but we'll just add a condition that as long as current selected item is greater than 0, because if it's less than 0, then it's going to go into the negative index. We don't want that. So as long as it's not 0, then current selected item is whatever it currently is minus 1. This will let us go down when we press the left button and select the previous sound. So our left button is going to decrease current selected item by 1, while our right D-pad button is going to increase current selected item value by 1, as long as it's not below 0 or higher than the number of total sounds. Again, this is simplified here at the bottom. I recommend copying if you want to just do a simplified version. But basically at the bottom you could say current selected item is equal to current selected item plus 1, and then you could add a condition to say as long as it's not greater than, let's say I have 400 sounds in there, then I could do as long as it's not greater than 400 in the statement on top. But to cut down on statements and also not have to count every time I add something or subtract something, we just do the number of sounds there at the bottom. So far I've added 4 sounds. It seems like these first couple sounds don't actually do anything. They don't actually make any sort of noise when I press the button, but our gunshot sound still works, so we know it still works. I'm also realizing that Y button's not a super great idea for this, so I'm going to edit my other 2 mods so they don't conflict, and we're going to go ahead and change the button as well. So I put in all of the sounds that I could find. I'm going to go ahead and go through and comment out certain sounds, like the ones in the beginning that don't make any noise at all. You can just turn them into comments and it'll take it off as an item. For a normal mod, you would not need to put all of these sounds in there. You would likely pick a handful of sounds that you want to do, but again, I'm showing off every sound in game. I also switched our sound to be triggered by the up button. And that's pretty much it for our sound test mod. Sure, many of you are asking by now, how the heck do I spawn stuff? Well, let's make a completely new mod so we can figure that out. Thankfully we have some example Luas to look at here, and one of them is called Spawn Stuff, which tells us exactly how we can spawn something into the game. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll just copy this for now, and I'll explain exactly how it works. Right in our Mario update function, under our statement that checks if we're pressing our D-pad button, we're going to paste this bit of code here, and the first line is going to spawn the actual objects. What I recommend doing is, to be safe, right before we do spawn object sync, we're going to make local object equal to, and this is the new object that spawns. So kind of complicated, but that first line just defines it. The second line is going to be the behavior. The third line is the model. The fourth line is the position, which we have it currently set to Mario's X, Y, and Z position. It'll spawn literally right on him. And the third line is for others, last line's for other stuff, but we won't worry about that just yet. This is how we can spawn stuff in. So here in game we press the down button and it spawns us in a block. Instead of a block, let's make our own custom enemy. So up here I've changed the behavior to our new custom behavior ID, which you can see is defined as a hook, and that hook is going to trigger our behavior init and loop function once it's called. I also changed the model to be one of the smiley faces from the TTM slide. We have a few examples in our example Luas of custom objects and how their custom behaviors behave, and I recommend just copying one of the functions in there and just going backwards. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm just going to copy this behavior from this mod that's supposed to replace Goomba behavior, and I'll explain and break down exactly what's going to be in our code. First, take a look inside of our init function. This is going to run one time when our object spawns. Here we have some stuff like physics, so we could change the gravity, we could change the hitbox size down here, we can change the draw distance, so how far away it can be seen. We also have an interaction type which I've set to damage, so once we touch it, it will damage us. We have some values here that we could use to adjust our hitbox, and very important at the bottom that we put that network init object. That'll make sure that we can actually sync the objects with all of the other players. Next we have our behavior loop. So inside of here we have some stuff that figures out where our player is. We have some stuff to animate, which we don't really need it. Actually, it's not really animated. Don't worry about understanding everything going on here. Just know that most of the logic here is for locating where the nearest player is going to be, and setting the smiley face to basically chase after them. I'm going to keep it beginner. I won't go over too much of this, but we got like here, it's going to find Mario's Y position and chase after him. But next, let's look at this statement down here. So we chose earlier to make a damage interaction. So if Mario's been interacted with, as we can see, we got in our init, we have interact damage. So if this happens, not only is Mario going to be damaged, but it's going to spawn a particle effect with a bomb sound, just like a bomb exploding, and the object is going to delete. So don't worry about, again, understanding everything. I recommend just copying my resources that I'll provide and taking a look at the Lua resources if you decide to make your own custom enemies. But I just felt like kind of going into it a little bit. One small detail I'll mention is that I've moved it over, the spawn point for our new enemy to be 400 plus Mario's X position. That way it's not going to be touching us immediately when it spawns in. So when we press down, our smiley will spawn and it will chase after us. As we can see, it's coming at us really hard. When we touch him, he's going to disappear and explode and damage us. So I got two of them chasing after me now. If they happen to touch me, it's going to hurt me and they're going to disappear. Last thing we're going to quickly do to finish off is we're going to make the model somewhat randomized so we can see all of the creepy smiley faces from the TTM slide. So we're going to go ahead and make a new table here. This is going to be very similar to my last tutorial video where we made a random sound table. So we're going to make the number 1, and the first one is just going to be our current blue smiley face. Make sure we put a comma at the end of all of our items except for the very last one in the table. Then we're going to put the number 2. I already have all the model names on hand, so I'll put those in really quick. Alright, now we're going to make a, just like the last video, variable called local random index, except let's call it random evil index. And this is going to be a random number 1 to 4. So we'll use our math random integer 1 to 4. Next, we're going to make a variable called random smiley, and this is going to be the model that actually spawns in, and it's going to be equal to our table, and the number in our table is going to be equal to the random evil index, so which is a random number between 1 and 4. And then that's going to be what we're going to use to replace the model that actually spawns in when we press the down button. And in order for our random index to actually update, we need to put it in our Mario update frame. Otherwise, it's going to pick a random number one time at the beginning of the game and stay that number the whole time. So make sure we put those variables as local variables inside of our Mario update function. Here we are in game, and as you can see, we got random ones spawning in. Each time it's random that I spawn in a new one. They all have the same behavior, which is the custom behavior we made, but they're all using custom models, or sorry, they're all using different models, random models that we have chosen. Thanks to everybody who liked and subscribed on my last tutorial video. If you like these kind of videos, make sure you like and subscribe as well, and you can help me to make more videos just like this.